Hey everybody, it's Josh Wigler here at RHAP. We know scripted TV. We know severance.com. That's the website you want to go to catch all of our Severance podcasts here on RHAP, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You want to get We Know Severance, a favorite Severance podcast of many people, including Ben Stiller and Adam Scott, both of whom I am neither of. I'm Josh Wigler. I'm a totally different person than those two. But some would say I am joined here by the GOATs of Severance podcasting, the great doctors Amanda and Melissa, Mandy R, Melly Dubs. How are we doing today? Severance Feedback Show.
Wow. Well, this is exciting to be talking about Severance again, one of my favorite topics. Yeah, I mean, this was like an episode that I think is like blows the rest of the season wide open in terms of the possibilities here with reintegration. We have goats, we have innies and outies and potential love triangles. I can't wait to see what our listeners want us to talk more about, but excited to be here.
Great stuff. I rewatched this episode shortly before, and there's lots of very interesting, like, specific word choices throughout that I was like,
Oh,
Well, give us some of the words. Which words were you surprised at the choosing of?
Well, so part of it was the Natalie Milchek conversation. In rewatching, her very specific wording is essentially the board wants you to know that I have received this gift and appreciated it. It wasn't the board wants you to know I've received this gift and I appreciate it. It's they're saying I appreciated it. And then, so I just thought that was very specific and interesting. And then some of the talking about the using of the UUR and the specific verb, just some of the like insidiousness of Lumon throughout this episode. I was like, yep, absolutely.
Very contrary to what we normally get from them. Usually pretty straight by the book. Lots to chew on, lots to talk about. Thank you both for holding it down so gamely on the recap podcast. I especially appreciate that you covered for me by saying I was sick as opposed to I failed the belly test.
Your larval pouch was acting up. Yeah, you got to watch that.
It's been a long time since anyone has said, show me your belly. And like, I've gotten comfortable, I guess. So I didn't do much to hide my larval sac, of which I have. I'm neither confirming nor denying that that's what I have, but it may be the case that I have.
As Dylan would say, nice sack.
Nice sack. Nice sack. Nice larva. Nice episode of Severance. Really great episode of Severance. Really great week of post-Severance discussion and content, not the least of which is, Melissa, you bring up the UUR. Since last you both podcasted, I believe, it's been announced and revealed, indeed released, a UUR audiobook as read by Dr. Rickon Laszlo Hale, a.k.a. friend of the pod, Michael Chernus.
It's crazy. It's so cool. The depths of this show and everything that they will do. The fact that this is not some like fan created whatever is just wild to me. It's
real. It's real.
Yeah. The first 8 chapters of the UUR are available by Apple, I think in both audio book and written book form, but of course you want to hear the audiobook where Michael Chernus will read to you all of his beautiful and profound prose in the voice of Dr. Rickon Laszlo Hale. I haven't listened to all of this yet. The whole runtime on it is just a little bit over an hour, so it'll go down real easy. You can probably knock it out in one sitting. I started listening to it while I was going to bed, and so I drifted off at some point, but I can say there's definitely some nuggets in this that suggest possible canon of the world of Severance. So like there's I think that there's some either new or confirmatory details revealed about that might be consequential, might not be, like sort of similar to the way I tend to regard the letter, what's that called?
The Lexington letter.
The
right.
Lexington letter. But it's like it has all the parts that you remember, that are really funny. Melissa, you're going to be delighted to learn we get more Funny Bees lore in the audiobook. And we
got Goats Lorne this week.
Goats Lorne. But before we get to that, I do have to say that we get details about Dr. Rick and Laszlo Hale's prowess as a lover. In this audiobook.
Incredible. I can't wait.
I guess don't spoil it, but
no.
He's doing all right?
It sounds like, if this account is to be believed, he's doing very well.
That's great.
I mean, it's
fantastic.
It's the only thing that makes sense.
The only thing that
why Devin has been putting up with him all this time.
Yeah. He's like prolific.
Prolific in many ways. Yes.
Yeah. Great. We love to hear it. So if you've checked it out, we encourage you to write in. We did not get much about the UUR. And by much, I mean, we didn't get anything about the UUR, but I want to make sure that people were aware of it. I plan on listening to it as well. Is it, so it's performed by Chernus. Do we know if it's read as if it's Rickon reading his own book at one of his book signings?
Oh, at one of his books. It sounds just like an audiobook written by Dr. Rickon Laszlo Hale.
Rickon recorded his audiobook for his book. Yeah.
If Rickon recorded his audiobook, does this assume Lumon participation? Is this the redacted version? Is this the version meant for the innies specifically?
Yeah, I'll listen more carefully and report back. I think that the parts that we've already seen are so it doesn't seem to be too doctored as to this point. But other extra TV show content, I haven't gotten to see this yet, but I know that we have Patricia Arquette and Adam Scott, great friend of the pod, competing on Hot Ones with a chicken wing eating contest. Josh, I knew that there was Hot Ones where you're being interviewed by the lovely bald gentleman who asks the
Sean Evans.
questions. Sean Evans. I didn't know that they had
the lovely bald gentleman is a great way of. He's lovely. He seems like a great interviewer.
He does. Oh, he's very thoughtful about his questions, and he is completely free of head lice, which is great for him. But it seems like this is a different spin-off version of the Hot Ones franchise, which is the versus format.
Yeah. Well, listen, we shuttered the operation, and it was.
So you guys were in talks for years, and Sean Evans was trying to get this versus brand. You said, no, Sean, that's ours.
That's ours. But then on the other side of shutting business down, I'm for sale. So just rolling in Hot Ones versus money. No, Hot Ones versus is the first that I know of Hot Ones spinoff. And it puts two guests against each other. They ask themselves questions, and if they get questions right or wrong, they have to eat a chicken wing. Like it's they gamified Hot Ones is what Hot Ones versus is. Adam Scott and Patricia Arquette are such gets, and I feel slightly offended on their behalf that they got put on Hot Ones versus instead of Hot Ones proper.
Right.
Perhaps it's because Ben Stiller was already on Hot Ones proper to promote Severance earlier in the season, but have the courage of your convictions, Hot Ones. Grill the innies as well. This very elitist to only be grilling Ben Stiller, I think.
Interesting.
That's my take.
I think they're fried, the buffalo wings.
That's my hot take. That's my hot take on the Hot Ones. We've got feedback this week about would you be surprised to hear goats?
Yeah,
no, I would not.
Let's hear it about these goats.
We got some feedback this week from Shannon. Shannon, who is new to the scripted side of RHAP by way of Severance. So welcome to the squad. Shannon writes in to the esteemed doctors Amanda and Melissa, and also Josh is how it's phrased, which I love. That is definitely going to be my new official salutation. Also Josh. Shannon wrote, just something I can't stop thinking about is the show me your bellies line from the GOAT department and Gwendolyn Christie. Shannon says, I guess my question is, do you think they didn't show Helly's belly button because she's not her quote unquote innie, but her quote unquote outie. Because they showed Mark's belly button. It seems funny, but the innie outie terminology around belly buttons is intriguing to me, just building on the theory that Helena is posing as her outie. That is Shannon's proof this week in the ongoing trial of Helly versus Helena.
Yeah. They're leaving
so I saw this speculated on the internet, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me because the like physical body of the innies and outies is the same, right? That's like the whole point, is that they are, you know, the same physical person, just bifurcated. So there is no reason why one of them would have a belly button and one of them wouldn't. So I don't know that it relates at all to the Helena Helly.
But if we saw her belly button, we would know for sure whether she was an innie or an outie.
Yeah. Should we search, is Britt Lauer?
Okay, yes. If that was the joke and I'm an idiot for answering it seriously, yes. Fair enough. It's been a long work day, folks.
People come here for all kinds of things. You know, they want to know belly button science as much as they want to know brain science.
Okay, if she was a clone, Melissa, you were like, if she wasn't gestated in a womb, then she would not have a belly button.
Yeah, so we did speculate about this on the last podcast. So again, like the cloning,
by the way,
depending on the state of the cloning technology, right? If it's just the fact that like an embryo is being implanted into a surrogate, there would still be a belly button there. But if they are some sort of like funky new clone technology, then sure, maybe no belly button. I think it's just a high-waisted skirt, y'all. I don't think it's anything more than that, but maybe it is.
If I was a goat person and I was really curious about the larval pouch, I would want to see the full midriff, because I feel like I'm not convinced. I'm not proven. With your high-waisted skirt shows me nothing.
Yeah, tired bare midriff, wired larva midriff. So we did not see any pouches on any midriffs. That being said, I thought that this was very interesting feedback that we got. We got it from a listener who goes by Polysonic. And Polly wrote in and said that speaking to your discussion of the transatlantic accent, bolstering the theory of offspring replacing people, Polysonic points to Bert's joke when Dylan locked him in the conference room. This joke, I will not repeat in its entirety, if you'll recall, amounts to the pouches that MDR allegedly carried. And Bert talks about larval offspring that will jump out and attack if we get too close. Bert says, "It's a joke, of course. The sentiment, somehow it holds. People are weird, though I'd be remiss not to say that in this theory, the larva eats and replaces you." And that bit is replicated in this email in bold. Following that bit, the larva eats and replaces you, being in bold, we are finished with the dialogue exchange as written in the email. And Polysonic points out that right after this scene is the goats. So in this episode, this past one that we have watched, Who's Alive? Who is alive? We get a larva sac check in the goat's room. Now, what I find particularly serendipitous about this is that this email from Polysonic was sent 8 days ago, prior to this episode coming out, and almost divining the sack chat onto this week. Should I call it something different?
Sack chat sounds pretty good. That's I don't think we can improve upon that.
Yeah. So did Polysonic manifest this? And also, what do we make of the larva sac being referenced back to back with goats in both of these seasons?
Yeah. First of all, Polysonic, if you are secretly in some way affiliated with Severance, the show, you could just DM us and like we will keep your secret. We don't have to. You could just
I'm seeing
tell us all the things and we'll pretend.
Polysonic's full signature suggests a very awesome job. So would love to know more about that, but it doesn't seem to be on Severance. No.
Okay. Because I was like, did they know? Otherwise, this is incredible. Yeah.
So, I mean, let's talk about the larval offspring, specifically related to the way of speaking that some of the characters on the show have. This is famously something that Colin Stone is all over. He sent me 3 long text messages in the past week. I haven't had a time to reply to any of them, but he basically, the point is, he still
You're such a
believes
badass.
he's right.
You reply to texts by podcasting at people. That's
I do. I do. This is our method of communication.
Yeah.
He texts me and I call and I mention him on a podcast. But I want to point out that the GOAT people, specifically Lorne, is the one that we hear speak the most. She has an accent. First of all, she has Gwendolyn Christie's British accent.
I spoke with Gwendolyn Christie this week about this
Amazing.
episode. That article is up on thr.com right now. What a delight. Let me just I'll just vibes check it rather than like go read the article. It's an interesting look into the character and everything, but let me just vibes check you that like speaking with Gwendolyn Christie, she's one of those famous people that you hope seems like you seem pretty cool. Are you pretty cool? Very cool. Very, very funny. Best laugh. Very good.
Oh,
that's my Gwendolyn Christie review.
She was also the guest on the official podcast with friends of the pod, Adam and Ben. And yeah, extremely engaging, really fascinating. She shares some of her background of growing up in a rural part of England. Like she knew people who raised sheep, so she had a lot to draw on for this character. She talks, extremely engaging in the interview that she has with Adam and Ben, and absolutely intoxicating accent and laugh and all of that. But there is an oddness to the way that she speaks. And a lot of characters on Severance have an odd way of speaking. And there is this kind of Lumonese language that has a certain whimsy and rhythm to it that we see depicted in the handbook and in and then other bits that we get of the Lumon lore. But Mark and certainly Dylan and also Helly and Petey, there's lots of characters in this world, Devin on the outside, who talk very plainly in very modern and understandable dialect. But people like Patricia Arquette and Irving, both Innie and Outie Irv, and now we know Lorne, who I don't think we learned her name in the episode, but I have since learned her name from seeing chatter on the
name. Yep.
On the I've learned her name. Say things like, "We don't abide such fripperies." Like that's a weird thing to say, Lorne. Like it's weird to say we don't abide such fripperies here. And we also saw that Helena's father, James Egan, calls her a fetid moppet. He seems like almost like an animatronic Egan, barely come to life. So there's certainly anachronism in the way some of these characters interact with the world. And it does make you wonder, are there characters populated in this universe that are literally out of time with the modern day? And perhaps that means that they are literally old souls or individuals who have been implanted into different bodies. I want to know what you guys think about these GOAT people. Are these GOAT people just packing up at the end of the day, 5:03 p.m., just walking out to the Lumon parking lot in their GOAT headdresses and getting into their 1992 Volvos and driving to another gated community somewhere? Or like, these people don't seem like the other Lumon employees that we've seen so far.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I agree. They do seem much more like candidates for full-time innie status. We know this is a thing with Gemma. It could certainly be a thing for more people. I think with the language of it all, I do think that there is something to the fact that the innies, for the most part, are coming in, and so much of what they're exposed to is the like curification of everything, right? It's the handbook, it's the videos, it's the whatever. And so It doesn't surprise me that some of these innies take on this sort of like particular way of speech. And if Cobell is a devout follower of Keir, she might have adopted some of that herself and like following the teaching. So I do wonder if it is more so like an Egan thing that then gets permeated amongst those who are like heavily influenced by them. Because we haven't seen like a lot of dialogue from Outie Irving, so I don't know like if it's quite the same way. But so that's sort of my theory, is that more so than any sort of like literally plucked from another time, just that the influence of them, they're such a blank slate as people that they will kind of take in the speech patterns of whatever it is, and if what they are watching and reading and interacting with tends to speak in a particular way, that they might adopt that. And then maybe someone like Dylan, who's less inclined to just like sit and read the handbook, doesn't speak in that way. So
I think that the full-time anything is what makes the most sense to me for these people. Otherwise, like they have to have like the longest cleanup process before they get like sent home.
Yeah.
Because I think like they're gonna get out of there and they're gonna say, why do I come home so physically tired and smelling like duty? Like what
goat poop.
So I think that they're either like spared no expense on the spa treatments on these employees, or they are there all the time. And I would think it's closer to like that. Seems like a group that is tight, tight and like really in their own society. I think that interestingly, they're the ones who ask to see the bellies, and yet I feel like this is the first time on this show I've encountered characters who I'm deeply, genuinely afraid might have pouches under their shirts.
Yeah.
Like they definitely strike me as pouch people for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that
pouches, if you know what I mean.
I think that the full-time innie theory is compelling for our friends in Mammalius nurturables, I think it's called. I want to point out that we do get like when they remember Miss Casey, the lovely fellow in the goat hat says, she told me my outie excels at stargazing, and somebody on the Redditor here posted that stargazing, this is a screenshot from Wikipedia. Stargazing is a symptom of polioencephalomachia, PEM, a neurological disease that affects goats. It is characterized by involuntary eye movements or nystagmus that make the goat appear to be staring into space.
Ooh,
that's
they lost you on the last word.
Space, yeah.
That's so cool. My thinking with the stargazing thing was just like, well, she lied. Like that's just you know, there's like,
but she did it.
But that is a very fun connection. Also, everyone knows the goats have rectangular pupils, right?
Yeah,
it's crazy and weird.
They have rectangular pupils. It's crazy. Goats are weird. Goats are weird.
Do you know who else is weird? Is Miss Cobell. We got some questions about Miss Cobell this week, who is driving off to have we deciphered this, Severance Internet? Do we have a feeling of where she was driving to?
Salt Neck is the name of the town that it appears that she is driving to. Theories that I've seen are there's one theory on the Reddit that has like that wonders if there's some connection between Salt Neck and the Lexington letter. I don't know that I buy that, but people are looking into this. I've seen that some people speculate that this could be the location of where the school for girls is that Harmony might have gone to. But it seems that there's something about Harmony's past that is connected to the intubation tube that she's carrying with her that we are imagining might have something to do with her mother,
right,
or maybe another relative that's connected to this Salt's Neck location.
And do we think that she just gets back in the car and decides to go back there? Like, what's the move? It's a lot of gas. It's a big gas trip.
Yeah.
I mean, she turned around, 238 miles early, thankfully. So she wasn't quite as much as it could have been. But yeah, it's far out there. It does make sense to me. I definitely also sort of assumed like, oh, maybe this is where Cobell's originally from. Something to do with this past of hers that appears to have involved sort of the indoctrination into this Kier philosophy. It is sort of interesting that it's so far away from this Lumen headquarters. It seems like the influence of Lumen is ever far reaching, according to like everything that we learn in terms of the number of locations that it has and everything. It is quite wild. And yeah, it does make me think in terms of like circling back to the GOAT people of just the like coordination of everybody in and out of that building, and like how many employees can possibly be staggered before you're way off course. And so it is just funny that you just like can't put anything past Lumen, because it does just seem like every time we find out something more about their about the company, it's like bigger and more expansive than we could think. Like I was definitely just convinced that it was just this building for basically the whole first season.
Sure, same, big time. And it's been a surprise that we've this doesn't even, it's not even like Lumen Prime. Like, what did they call it? It's like Lumen number like 109 or something like that. Yeah. Was it 108? Was it actually 108? I can't remember. But we have some feedback on Cobell from Benny M, the great Ben behind the curtain, who wrote in and said, do you think it's possible that permanent outies who work on the severance floor also must have severance chips to get the job? Could Cobell have chosen to do a severed job at some point, caused by the grief of losing Charlotte, whoever that may be? Is the reason then that Cobell is scared because she's afraid of their ability to reactivate her chip? I think Ben's question specifically wondering about, why did Cobell suddenly seem so afraid to get into the car? I mean, there's some obvious ones, I think, like being driven to shady location and being murdered is on my mind as one possibility. But another possibility is like, if she's at some point, if Lumen employees get severed, we know that one of the aims is a chip for every home, right? Is sort of the idea. Does that start with high-ranking Lumen employees? And if so, could she just be locked down? Is that a fear?
So I've seen a lot of this speculation about the higher level Lumen employees and different sort of iterations of how the severance procedure works. And there is one, theory that I saw getting some traction on Reddit in the past week, and I've seen different flavors of this idea that Ms. Cobell like is a permanent innie, or that people are like severed and are in some sort of state of control, and that because they also are severed, Lumen has more control over people like Milchick and Cobell than an average employee would otherwise. And at least this theory was that, she was severed as a child and raised as an innie. This is something that they did at this Myrtle Egan School for Girls, and that this is like her innie was raised to be so devoted to Kier, and that there's something. And I'm not going to completely rule out that there could be something like this happening with some sort of neuro implant and some kind of control that Lumen is exerting over the middle management level folks. I just don't understand really what that buys you, because we see that they have coercive control over these individuals that seem to be in this form. Like, if they were severed earlier and are just in this like long-term state of being controlled as innies, like I just don't think that adds anything interesting to me, anything more interesting than the fact that, you know, okay, Harmony is just some person who is being, you know, influenced by Lumon through normal principles of coercion and human behavior, than like the fact that there's also some implant and they're separated. I just think that would start to dilute the beauty of this fundamental work-life balance question. Like, is there a part of you that you want to avoid? I think it would start to just get messy, and I can see a weaker show doing that. I'm thinking about, you know, one of the shows we talked about doing in our media club, which I do really enjoy, but Orphan Black kind of had this great concept that was really strong in the first season, and then as they had to up the ante and do more and more and more, it just kind of lost the thread. And I can see why people are speculating about this, and maybe this show could do this well, but I don't want to think that Milchick and Cobell are severed and that we're only seeing their innies, and that we'll learn that they spend 1 month a year in Barbados. Like, I just don't know what that buys us in terms of furthering what's compelling about the show.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the idea that there are people who, without being severed, are bought in this way. I think that there's interesting conversation to be had there about that, about why people might choose to undergo severance and why some people might choose to follow Lumon even without that. The one person that I do wonder about is Natalie, just because she does seem strange and like, you know, she's so the PR, whatever, she has some sort of like direct link to the board, it seems like. So that might be the one. And just this like kind of weird look that she has with Milchick after he's given the gift. And that's the only one that I was like, maybe it doesn't have to be true about everybody, but if it is true about anybody, that would be my guess.
I could see that. I thought that whole scene is so loaded, and I think that it's a terrific scene, and it felt very Lynchian. Like it felt very Twin Peaks, the way that we linger on her smile, and then she finally leaves. Felt like straight out. I've been watching a lot of Twin Peaks lately, also, so this is part of why. But I think with Cobell, there's enough backstory type stuff that it's hard for me to imagine that she is just like all innie all the time. I could see it for Natalie and Milchick. I could see a world in which like one of the reasons why both of them can like come across as like so like their dialogue can be so weird, their mannerisms, the way they interact with the world could be so strange because their innies are, you know, relatively new to the world, and that's just who they always are. Like I could see a world where that happens, that all of the Milchick that existed prior to being severed has not yet appeared on the show. I could see something like that. But even then, I think it gets into the territory that you're describing, Amanda, of like we're sort of like escalating it's not just to like lay it at the feet of another show, a genre show that I spent a lot of time watching and a tiny bit of time podcasting about was Heroes. And eventually, like in Heroes season 1, like, oh, cool, heroes. And then in Heroes season 2, it's like, oh shit, everyone now is a hero. Like, you know, Ando doesn't need superpowers. Ando's superpower is that he's Ando. Like, that's it. Like, he doesn't need anything more than that. And like Milchick's, I don't know what if I want to call it superpower, but maybe is being Milchick, is not being like any
leather jacket. Yeah. I think it's more interesting that some of these people are of coherent sound and
about the wider world of the show. It speaks volumes about the wider world of the show if these people are just like this kind of like in like really out there to all of us watching this, right? These people who feel like they're really whatever dear leader says, right? Like full on sheep in the flock, sheep
or
to the
goats.
shepherd, or goats to the shepherd. Is it a goat herd? If you're,
it must be a goat herd.
So I think goats to the goat herd. And so I think it strikes me that they're more like that, and that odd sensation of watching that and wondering how is that even possible. You have to be literally brainwashed in order to be like that. It's fascinating to watch.
It is. I
on
wonder if
television in 2025.
Wonder if anything like that could ever happen in real life. Yeah, if we get to the end of this show and the only individual with agency is Kier's brain in a jar somewhere, I think it's a much less interesting show than what I hope we're watching.
As our best friends Ben and Adam are listening right now, being like, "Oh no." But they're all severed. We'll find out. We will see how that all goes. From Claire, another question about Lumon policy. So just to shift, Claire wonders if the severed employees have a clause in their contract enforcing militant sunscreen use at all times on the outside because of their pasty winter skin tones. Would be a giveaway that 5 months had not passed. So that was Claire's take, which I actually think is interesting. Like, if 5 months, Dylan, I think, would have had like enough to say, like, you got some color, dude. But
yeah,
I guess also they don't necessarily know what the sky looks like, so maybe they don't have hands.
The lack of this is the thing, is if it had happened the other way around and they were suddenly like very tan 2 days later, that would be notable. But I feel like the lack of change to innies who don't understand the concept of seasons is maybe not super specific, but yeah.
We don't really know the climate of
it's always very wintry. Yeah.
I mean, we haven't passed that much time, but this seems to be a pretty dreary place. That would be very funny though, if your outie went on vacation and you came back with a tan.
Yeah. You came back with like braids, like oh my god.
I was gonna say, yeah.
You're on a cruise. Yeah.
No,
sure.
Don't do it. Don't get the braids.
Don't do it.
Or like, what if you're
don't do it?
What? Like your outie gets like a tattoo or something, right? Like
that's true.
Dyes their hair. There's so many things.
You must not be allowed to get a tattoo. That would not pass the code detectors.
It would F with the code detectors. I think that probably, do you have to be totally untattooed in order to be a severed employee? Great question. Okay, let's ask questions about Gretchen, the newest cutie on the block. I love Merritt Wever. One of my all-time favorites. The fact that she is like Dylan's what appears to be wonderful partner in life. That's who Merritt Wever is playing. What a delight. And I am just accepting that at face value. And one of the reasons I'm accepting that at face value is immediately after the Gretchen scene, we go straight to Gretchen with outie Dylan. So we followed her.
And they live on a cattle farm.
They live on the cattle farm. What an incredible question. For cattle farmers? It was just truly the best. But we don't go back.
You don't have any other family photo that you could show him? No?
Why would they? That's clearly the superior family.
It's a pretty great photo. I would take
rad.
that. I would trot that.
Have you ever done any of like the Old West photos? Have you?
No. My husband has a couple of them, like one from when he was a kid, and then he and one of his friends got one taken when they were on a trip. But we don't have one.
That might be like a straight white guy thing, because like all the straight white guys I know also have cowboy pictures, including myself. So could just be
maybe
like the thing that we have to do.
All you straight white guys together.
Yeah. Put us all in the same Wild West tavern. So I think Gretchen's on the level. There's some questions about what Gretchen does for work. Susie had a thought though. Susie wrote in and said that I don't think Gretchen's a police officer.
Yeah.
Because she would have health benefits if she was a police officer. Susie
they defund the police.
Maybe the police have been defunded in the world of Severance. I have a suspicious feeling that the answer is no, they haven't. Perhaps replaced, but not defunded, overly funded. Susie says perhaps she's an hourly Lumon security guard, and that's why she's on such a familiar basis with Mr. Milchick.
Yeah, definitely seen that speculation of her working security at Lumon, which I think is really interesting. I do wonder if there is, this use of first name basis, I think is really interesting. I still wonder if it is just because of the very specific situation where Milchick had to go and be like, hey, are you willing to come meet with this innie version? And if that's just how they ended up on a first name basis and it's not actually a clue to anything. But it is certainly fun to speculate. And watching this whole scene again with the, did you do the cookies? You just cut the tube or whatever. I was like, man, come on, Outie Dylan.
Get it together, Dylan.
Like, she has to tell him which ear the kid's ear infection is in. And it's like, okay, bud, you can do this. Come on.
I hard related to this scene in like a way that it just felt so real. Both of these scenes back to back, actually. Some days I feel like innie Dylan. Other days I feel like outie Dylan, and it totally depends on the day. And I've been having a lot of outie Dylan days recently, and I felt so seen by my guy on the couch. And it was great. It was very therapeutic because it was like, you get off that couch and make those cookies, man. You can do that. Can't you do that? Come on, bud. So I am so invested in the health and wellness of Dylan and Gretchen. And they're three, I assume, beautiful children.
Adorable. I think everybody this week is super high on Merritt Weaver, like 100% approval rating across the board. She is delightful in this place. Somebody on the Reddit, I think, pointed out that she's dressed exactly like Pam Beasley in one of the episodes of The Office.
Amazing.
I think that she's mostly on the level. I was very surprised that we see Dylan's actual wife make this visitation. I think that the connection, if she is in fact a security guard at Lumon, that might make her a particularly trusted person who actually would be allowed to do this kind of family visitation. Whereas I don't know that they would let just anybody do that. I think that we've seen enough of just how sweet and gentle and well-meaning she appears to be that I want to think she's on the level too, Josh. I think that I'm very interested in whether their connection to Milchick, both Dylan and Gretchen's, is a little deeper than just they have both worked at Lumon together. I wonder if Milchick maybe got them both these jobs in some form, or that there's some other connection before they came to work here. And I also think that you definitely get a vibe difference in the way Gretchen is around innie Dylan and outie Dylan. And I don't know if you heard in our podcast, but Melissa and I are very, very keen on the idea of Gretchen cheating on her husband with her husband's innie.
A throuple?
I'm big on throuples
everywhere.
Throuples are the new clones.
Throuples are the new. Throupling with your clones is, I mean, I don't know. It's right there.
The ultimate. Yeah. I'm rewatching this. I was just like, I'm doubling down on this vibe. The two of them together at the beginning is so cute. It's like big new relationship energy. I think this is exactly what I said on the last podcast. But it's just like this level of like all of the cares of their real life are gone, and they just get to be like a new couple again who are just getting to know each other. But there's also that like level of familiarity and comfort combined. And I can totally see that, there's none of this, like, you got to make the cookies and you got to care about the eardrops and the whatever, right? It's just the two of them get to hang out surrounded by giant pictures of themselves for some reason. I think it's, I will be shocked if that is not the direction we go this season. That is like my strongest take, I think, about Severance this season.
Wow.
Love that.
The Dylan, Gretchen, Dylan love triangle. I mean, that feels very Severance. It feels like an extremely Severance thing to do. Where like that would be a throuple conundrum that I'd be very, very invested in. Because I love outie Dylan, but innie Dylan's our guy.
He's our guy.
Yeah.
I know.
So,
he wants to do well and make her proud. It's so
maybe
sweet.
he can reintegrate. Maybe he could reintegrate.
And then she's like, "Oh, I miss my innie, innie boy toy, my side piece."
That's right.
My
That's right.
inside piece.
Oh no! Oh my! Spicy. It's not just Hot Ones versus this week, folks. Get spicy on the We Know Severance pod. Okay, let's talk about Dylan's bestie. Let's talk some Irving this week. We got a really great long feedback email from Leah or Lee. I don't want to assume. I have seen it pronounced both ways. I will go with Leah just for the sake of having one consistent thing that I'm saying. Please correct me if I am wrong. One of Leah's thoughts is, first of all, a lot of thoughts about is it Helena? Is it Helly? Why one or the other? Leah is team it's Helly and not Helena. One of the arguments among many being that Helena would have known that it was dark outside when the OTC occurred and that there would be no gardeners. She would have had more time to come up with a better lie.
Yeah.
I think that's, for me, that's really good. That makes me feel either like that's Helly or Helena really missed an obvious question to prepare for on the test. Like this was gonna be on the test. But then has some thoughts about Irving. So Leah says, is Irving part of some underground resistance to Lumon alongside Ragabi? They are likely keeping track of severed workers to see who might be down for the cause, and that the tunnel that Irving is painting is not necessarily somewhere he's been, but perhaps an image provided by another resistance member. And outie Irving has been hoping that by painting it over and over, it may slip into the consciousness of his innie. So what do we think of the idea that Irving and Ragabi could be connected as part of whatever anti-Lumon task force underground resistance is developing?
Yeah. I mean, I think that Ragabi is my number one draft pick for who is it that Irving calls in that scene at the end of episode 2, where he says, my innie got the message. There was some speculation. Is he calling outie Bert, or is he calling some character we haven't met yet? I think, Ragabi surfaces again in this episode. We really need to understand so much more about what her motivation is, what her history is. We know that she is a former Lumon employee. We know that that Irving also worked at Lumon for a number of years before he was severed. So could they have been connected prior to this? And he's obviously in his outie mode been working on gathering this information. So I really like the idea that Irving and Ragabi are in cahoots. I think that's a much neater story to tell than to involve somebody that we don't know yet. So I like that. I like that very much. What do you think, Melissa?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. It seems unlikely that he's calling outie Bert because outie Bert is in a car watching him make the phone call. So unless he's like leaving a voicemail or something.
Yeah, he could have just gotten out of the car and be like, I'm not home. You can talk to me right here.
Yeah. So I think the Ragabi thing makes the most sense. I am sort of curious because the other potential might be some other like current Lumon employee who we have met but are not aware is like a mole on the inside or something. Is there, a
Lorne?
version?
He's calling Lorne.
Yeah, or like Natalie or Milchek or Cobell or like somebody who might have some sort of like ulterior motive here. So Ragabi absolutely makes the most sense. I'm just speculating that there are like several options.
No, it's a good question of like who else exists that could like fill that role. If we're trying to think of like who could Irving be aligned with, if he's aligned with people here. Like there's a world where he and Bert are aligned on the outside, right? And like one of the reasons why we didn't see that interaction is because Bert's like, bro, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be here. Go home fast, right? Like, you know, there could be something like that could drop. But I like the idea of it being Ragabi now that Ragabi is back on the show, right? And I think another thing that I would like about it is maybe it could help explain some of what Irving's been experiencing with the, you know, with like the sludge and all of this stuff. Like, what if Irving has been experiencing some reintegration side effects? Like, what if the reason Ragabi is further along on the reintegration path would be because she's been working it out on Irving? So there's stuff to think about here. For sure.
Yeah. And just to spin out more about a potential that Ragabi and Irving have been colluding on the outside. I mean, we saw the reintegration procedure in the last episode. Melissa and I were very excited about it, and we talked about it quite a bit on the recap podcast. But one of the things that the reintegration process featured was EEG monitoring of brain activity and the 5 different bands of brain activity on the electroencephalogram, the oscillatory activity that is corresponds to different states of wakefulness and attention. And the largest application of EEG brain monitoring is sleep studies. And what we understand the most about these different frequency bands is that they correspond to levels of wakefulness and sleep. And you can use this to sort of monitor when you're in deep sleep and when you're in REM, which is the phase of sleep during which people dream. And I think it's very possible that if the severance procedure, if the chip has something to do with modulating the oscillatory activity of the brain, that we talked so much about sleep, specifically in respect to Irving. And we've learned that outie Irving is depriving himself of sleep. And now we know that his painting is at least trying to communicate something from the outie to the innie. And it made me wonder if he had been coached in some of these principles by somebody who had knowledge of the operation of the severance procedure. And if Ragabi could have been someone who said, what you really need to do is you need your brain to get into this state while you're at work. And that's where you might be able to pass this information back and forth. So the fact that we saw EEG is involved, the fact that that is so closely tied to studying sleep. And we know that Irving has had this kind of sleep. He's been trying to, you know, manipulate his sleep by staying up when he's in outie form. I think that suggests that maybe that's a plan that they developed together.
That's cool. Love that.
Yeah.
Science
is that why he's playing the loud music so that he can't fall asleep?
Maybe he just likes Motorhead.
Does that work?
Just like Motorhead. Like loud music to keep you from falling asleep? I mean, to a point.
Yeah, like, but could you fall asleep? Would you fall asleep eventually?
So there's been like sleep deprivation studies where they prevent people from falling asleep, or they wake people up right before they reach the dream state and the REM phase of sleep. And people who, when they do that to you, when they disturb you, so you never get into REM sleep,
become your mortal enemies for the rest of your life.
Yeah, no, it really messes with people. Like they're not rested. It messes with their memory consolidation. Sleep is incredibly important. And if you talk to me long enough, even if you don't talk to me, and I detect that you have bad sleep hygiene or you are having sleep
I've gotten
trouble,
lectured by Dr.
I will courses and give you unsolicited advice up the Yahoo, because sleep is extremely important.
Yeah.
It's important for your physical health, your mental health. It's important for your cognition. It's related to your longevity. It's a big thing.
It's part of why daylight savings, like there's so many issues around like spikes in heart attacks and car accidents and all sorts of things that are like really hard to explain by just the fact that it's an hour earlier or later. Because like, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, sure, maybe it's that you're driving a little bit more in the dark, but maybe it's also that, you know, that one missing hour of sleep potentially throwing you off your cycle is enough to impact your cognition and your physical health and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, sleep is great and has lots of ties with memory, which we've talked about before. So I think it's really interesting, this idea that Irving is using this strategically to try to send a message to his innie. I think it's very smart, and agreed sort of ties him into, okay, who could have helped him come up with that strategy.
Yeah, who
and so
helps
then Regardie
develop
plays
that
the role
theory,
that makes
right? Yeah, I think that's a big question. We just got a late breaking email. Let's do one more. This is from Claudia. This is from Claudia, who writes in with a subject line, Helena in the underworld. Let's go back to Helly very quickly. Let's go to Helly. And Claudia writes, I really didn't want it to be Helena who had returned to MDR, but your discussions have inclined me to believe that, yes, that is Helena Egan cosplaying her innie.
Wow.
Claudia says that this would imply two important things. We saw Helena examining video of her innie with Mark. Pulling off the deception would mean repeatedly viewing all of the archived footage of her innie so she could get her hands on, so she wouldn't be caught off guard about something she was supposed to know. Reliving all of this through her innie could turn Helena into an innie ally. So we've talked about that as a possibility of like, maybe we'll radicalize Helena if this is Helena. Claudia continues and says, I think that Helena decided to impersonate her innie immediately after the Gala fiasco, and that is one of the reasons that Miss Cobell could not be permitted to return to her old post. Helena can deal with Milchick, but could not stomach the idea of pretending to be subservient to Cobell. Cobell would also probably be more likely to suspect something. This would not seem to have been an issue, as they initially decided not to bring back the rest of Mark's team, but Helena would not have known that when she first met with Cobell. Claudia continues, I thought Helena looked pretty disappointed when Mark didn't kiss her in the hallway. I do not think the real Miss Helly R would have waited for him to take the initiative.
Interesting.
I totally agree with that.
Now I'm back on board. It's Helena.
You're so easy to sway.
I'm like that. I'm like that goat that you bring to Final Tribal on Survivor. Last thing someone told me. You know, like that's what's gonna do it.
You're a shambolic rube.
I'm a shambolic rube. It's on my business cards.
Just give this guy a pineapple. Yeah.
I have one downstairs.
Nice. I mean, it's really hard, right? The whole point is that we are not supposed to know, and that there are really good arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
This
is the Reddit's favorite thing to talk, and people are so too smart and invested in this for their own good. Like the Helly R debate is raging, and I think it comes from the fact that we are watching so closely that I do think a lot of people who are not watching and listening to podcasts and reading theories and trying to consume everything about the show, Melissa, like we watched the first episode and we were completely credulous that this is obviously Helly. Like we have our innies back together. They're all on the floor. Of course it is. But people have figured it out, and it almost seems too easy, right? Like it almost seems like, oh, there must be some sort of twist. And there was a really, really great post that was on the Reddit this week, and I won't find it quickly, but we sort of talked about this on our podcast a little bit, that there is an Alfred Hitchcock quote about the difference between surprise and suspense. And the show is trying to build suspense about Helly's identity and what will happen in the world when that is revealed. The show is not necessarily just trying to surprise us for the sake of a surprise. And the fact that we're in on it, potentially, if that's true, if this is undercover Helena, the fact that we're in on it shouldn't make it less impactful or effective whenever there's a consequence that plays out, because we're watching with knowledge and we're wondering, will she react this way or will she react this way? Will any mark figure out it's her? What happens when an integrated mark shows up on the severed floor and is interacting with outie Helly? Like,
right.
I think that there's so much effective storytelling and emotionally charged momentum that's being loaded onto this plot, because this is a question mark. And I don't think it relies on the writers being so much more clever than the audience, that they're 2 steps ahead, and when we finally find out what it is, we never would have guessed it.
Yeah, I think we talked about this in the first season coverage too, that it was like guessing, like the Helly is an Egan thing was definitely something we talked about pretty early on. And it, certainly was heavily speculated on, but it doesn't take away from the fact that like the breadcrumbs were there. And if you thought about it, you followed the breadcrumbs and then reached the logical conclusion as a result of that. Like, I think, a surprise that comes out of nowhere with no warning is not satisfying, right? It's like, oh, by the way, you're an idiot for not having guessed this thing that you had zero context for and never would have assumed.
Right.
So yeah, like to me, it's not a detriment to the show if it ends up being the case, but yeah.
I think that can work, but like you have to have like the building blocks that really pointed the way. Like you have to, like, once you find out, be able to go back. And if that's what's happening here, I think we'll be able to do that pretty cleanly. But will they, won't they? Is she Helly? Is she Helena? I think is an ongoing, is it the ongoing mystery of season 2 of Severance right now?
I guess so.
Well,
that or what's up with all the pineapple?
What's up with all that pineapple? Okay, folks. Well, you can put your bellies away. I think that's it for the podcast. This time out, Severance Feedback and Theories show at We Know Severance here at WeKnowSeverance.com. Go subscribe, do the things, tell your friends. It's a good time. We would love to have you and all of your friends who watch Severance as part of our podcast, Innie Collective. Go spread the word. It's an easy URL, WeKnowSeverance.com. And if you want to get some feedback to us, you can email us, severancerhap@gmail.com. That's severancerhap@gmail.com. We're even getting feedback from people who are still listening to our previous material. We've got Kate, who is currently rewatching Severance season 1 and listening to our most recent run through of season 1 as part of the prep process, and mentioned that we were talking about the hibiscus wrap and assumed that we were probably talking about home spa treatments. By the way, maybe the GOAT department gets hibiscus baths as possible. But Kate says the way that Cobell said he loved my hibiscus wraps seems very much like a food product, not unlike her shitty fucking cookies. So that's Kate's take on one of our past podcasts. So
did Kate know? Did she know that the cookies were shitty before season 2? Because that was the big. I mean, talk about suspense versus surprise. That was a healthy heaping tablespoon of both.
Well, I think Kate's watching season 2 and now rewatching season 1 alongside season 2. Amazing. Because that's what Severance do to you.
Yep.
Severance will do that to you. So if it's doing that to you and you got to get some theories out of your brain, I can think of no better place to put those brain thoughts than the brain experts here on We Know Severance, and also Josh.
And also Josh, who interviewed Gwendolyn Christie recently and just dropped that so subtly. And also Josh, my butt.
I gotta just where I can flaunt, I'm gonna. So that's how that's gonna be. Send your feedback in. You can hit us all up on socials. I'm at Round Howard. Mandy R, where are you?
You can find me on Blue Sky, where I'm at Dr. Amanda R. And you can follow my other podcast on we're on Blue Sky at Cry Laugh Pod, the Crying Laughing podcast in your podcatcher of choice. At least one fan of my severance coverage, I just got this email in, was very unhappy with how I felt about Interstellar.
No.
So I won't say, hey, if you like me talking about Severance, check out my other podcast, but maybe you won't like what I have to say about Interstellar.
Dr. Amanda is famously on the record as an anti-space person.
Anti-space. Sorry about that.
You know what you're getting into if you're listening to Amanda talk about space. Melly Dubs, you're talking about time and other sorts of shenanigans. Where can people find you? What's going on the pod?
Yeah, I mean, if you want some pro space content, Whirlwind Podcast is talking Doctor Who. So Kevin Mahadeo, Adam H. and I are still going through that show, Series 8 with Peter Capaldi, which is very exciting. Veronica Mars, Gravity Falls, Schmigadoon, Pretty Little Liars, all Smash. There's all sorts of stuff going on there. So check it out. Whirlwind Pods on social media, Whirlwind Podcasts in your podcatcher.
Amazing. All right. We'll be back soon to recap the next episode of Severance dropping on Thursday night. We'll be back Friday morning in your feeds with our first recap, and then we'll come back a few days later with our theories and feedback show. Hope y'all have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you when we all go back down the elevator to Lumon together. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.